So while we're fixing our upside down and backwards projector, my name is Lynne Johnson, and my friend Susan Engel, and we're from a company called Zulka. It has a funny name because it's Swiss, and but the benefit of it is it has this U in it with two little dots above that looks like a smiley face. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about myself. I started out my technical career as a software engineer and became a project manager, then an Agile project manager, and now I'm a line manager, but in an Agile way, so I'm more of a career coach. And I'll just let Susan introduce herself.
Hi, thank you all for coming, first of all. There's quite a few of you. I started working at Zulka about 2 years ago, and I specialize in product management. I'm a UX consultant and an innovation consultant, so anything to do with product and product strategy is where I live. I think this is working now, so you're going to get on? Cool. Yep. So we will talk quickly about discovery and what we need to do and why, and then we will talk about Liftoff as a tool that we use for that. So, discovery. At Zulka, we follow a Zulka Agile delivery method, and if you've ever seen the GDS standard, you'll know the names: Discovery, Alpha, and Beta. At the end of Beta is where we hope to have an MVP. Then the product goes into the live phase, and then at some point it's retired. Because I specialize in product strategy, I kind of live in the discovery and alpha and beta phases usually, because it's not about building the great product, it's about making sure that we build the right product. Right? The interesting thing is that we are very firm that discovery is not something that happens right at the beginning and then not ever again. For every bigger initiative, for every bigger feature, we actually have ongoing discovery all the time. I think one of the speakers yesterday touched on that. Dual track Agile is part of that. So discovery throughout. Discovery is interesting because we have to quickly get from an idea of something to a vision of MVP and what we're going to build and how. The idea can be tech-driven, it could be business-driven, it could be user value-driven, various setups, but we need to kind of quickly figure out what we're going to deliver. So minimum viable product, everybody here familiar with that? Yes? So we need to make sure that it delivers value to the user, that we will actually have adoption on this product. That there will be value to the business, and that means the business will be able to capture value from the product, or that will deliver some savings or benefits. We need to identify the dependencies, risks, any constraints, legal, governance, timescales, technical, and define product strategy. Interesting part is that we very often have to find out whether it's the MVP that the client wants, or is it that the client needs to earn money quickly out of this product? So does it have to be a minimum awesome product? Does it have to have minimum marketable features? So it's not always the MVP. So our discovery. Discovery covers obviously stakeholder interviews and initial product discussions. That can be context mapping, it could be initial story mapping. And then, obviously, extensive user research. By users, we mean everyone, anyone who will be the consumer and receiver of the product. Primary, secondary, internal, external, everyone. And that also means sometimes other systems that will be consuming that software. Business research. What does the business want to do out of this product? And the interesting part is when we are in bigger setups and we have conflicting stakeholders trying to get conflicting agendas out of the same product. That becomes really interesting. And then competitor research, direct competitors, indirect competitors, what is out there on the market, what are we competing with, Also general market research. Sometimes we have to actually ideate other products and services. The original product that we envisaged is just not cutting it, so we move quickly into innovation space. If you work in innovation, you'll know the strategizer, value proposition mapping. So sometimes we have to quickly do that. Obviously we do constraints, everything that is going to bind us on the product. Is there any governance coming our way? Is there any timescales we have to comply with? Technical research is interesting. Obviously we have to go and quickly come up with a stack we're going to work with. We have to quickly validate whether all the parts will fit and work together. We have to go and have a look what new technologies out there that we can use. And what legacy systems do we have to put up with? So legacy and bigger projects is always the fun bit. And then we have to go and test these ideas as well. We have to sometimes do user testing quickly on prototypes. So hopefully by the end of discovery we can carry out some sort of product mapping, we can do story mapping, and we can actually define releases, we can plan release strategy for the product. But this all has to happen in discovery, and discovery is usually time boxed, and it doesn't take months and months, right? We're in agile space, so we have to uncover a lot of stuff in a really short period of time. On top of that, because we're a consultancy, we have added complication of all sorts of projects and teams. So we work on projects literally from digital to mobile to IoT. We have big projects, right? Small projects, digital, enterprise,
Embedded.
platforms. Sorry?
Embedded,
yeah. And then team setup. Sometimes we have our team, sometimes it's the client's team, sometimes there are third parties, small teams, co-located, distributed, what have you. It's literally, and then agile awareness. Sometimes we have teams who are quite good into going into agile software delivery. Sometimes we have teams who are experts in agile but never have heard of the manifest. It gets interesting. So we at some point, and I say we, Lynne actually, at some point discovered a tool that helps us launch into projects. And that's something called Liftoff, but I'll have her introduce it properly.
We call it our secret weapon. And but before I talk about our secret weapon, I want to tell a little story. A story is always good, isn't it? I'm going to tell you, when I first started as a software engineer back in the year 2000-ish, I was a little late bloomer in this world of technology. It's a waterfall-y story because everything was waterfall-y, and I didn't know any better, and so I'd rock up to a project and they'd give me a piece of stuff to do, and I'd get my head down in the zone all on my own, and I had absolutely no idea how the stuff I was working on fit into the big picture of things. I really didn't know the people around me. It took a long time to really achieve that. So then, in about 2001-ish, 2001, I discovered XP, and then the dot-com fell apart, and I lost my job, and so I had to stop doing that. But then I got back into it, and I discovered Scrum and Scrum Mastering, and we were delivering stuff that actually people wanted, and that the users found useful. But there's still something missing. I still felt like we weren't aligned. We were fixing things in retrospectives. And so my team was in flow, and I decided to go off and do something for myself. I wanted to get into this agile coaching world. So I found this coach camp in Barcelona, and the hotel's right on the beach, and I thought, well, this is cool, and my stepdaughter lived in Barcelona, so I'll just hook up with her afterwards. And so I rocked up, and it was absolutely amazing, mind-blowing experience. But besides that, I mean, if you want to talk about that another time, please do come and talk to me about it, because Agile Coach Camp is all over Europe, and it's really fantastic. But the one session that was there, I walked in late. And you know the law of 2 feet, when you go to an open space, you can go from one session to the other. So I rocked up a little bit late, and my friend Deborah Pruce was talking about this thing called Liftoff in Agile Chartering, and it was like a light bulb going off above my head, and I thought, wow, this is it. This is what we're missing. When I was a project manager in the waterfalling world, we would put a charter together, and we present it to the room full of people, and everybody would leave with a different idea of what that charter was all about. So I was basically telling people how we're going to work together. There was no communication with each other. So, I should change the slide, because this is what was introduced to me in that session, was this book, Liftoff, by this wonderful woman, Diana Larson, and her partner, Ainsley Nines. It's a little tiny book. Get it, it's fabulous. We're going to touch a few things in the book today, but it really changed my world as far as lifting off projects is concerned. So it's a lift off, it's a kick off, it's a way of having a common understanding. So basically what I'm going to tell you now is about the essence of this book. Do you know how to do that? No. These are the 3 dimensions in lifting off a project with Agile Chartering. The purpose, that's the inspiration. Why are we going to hang out together for however long it is and work together? So with this dimension, you have the vision, the team mission, and the mission tests. And that's usually put together before you have your chartering session. And the next one is alignment. It's mostly about the team, but there's a bit in there, the values and principles, which is about the team community. And the working agreement, I think last night's one of the lightning talks was a young woman talking about how important working agreements are. And then context, how does this thing, like I said, in my waterfalling world, how does this thing fitting in the big picture of the company that we're working for, or their vision, and what do we need in order for us to develop it? And committed resources, that does not mean people. That's stuff, computers, servers, all that sort of thing, because we don't talk about people as resources in Agile, do we? And the perspective analysis, what's going to come and bite us on the butt. So now Susan and I are going to dig a little bit deeper into these 3 dimensions, but that's basically Agile Chartering in a nutshell. So that's it. So let's go into purpose. It's the inspiration and the motivation. And when we do the sessions, we have these exercises, and getting people off their butts and getting them to do stuff is a really good way to for everybody to get to know each other. Especially for projects that you have a new team that's getting together. But also for projects, when you're in a company and you have a new project coming along and you might have the same people on the team, it's still a really good thing to do to get people started off. So, like I said earlier, these three things sometimes, or most of the time, I have, we have a conversation, Susan and I, about this. I think the vision, team mission, and mission tests should be brought to the meeting. The vision, because our clients, it's their vision, and the team mission, because they have an idea of what they want from the team, and the mission tests, because they are the criteria for success, and it's our client that knows what they think their criteria of success. But the thing about this is, it's only a draft. So we as a team, we might not have much to say or add to the vision, but certainly what is expected of us as a team, and the mission tests, does that fit into the criteria of what we think is all about. So the elevator pitch, that is what I've given to projects, to clients in order for them to get started on their, if they haven't created a vision already, it helps them get started in its beginnings of putting together a vision. It gives you a little template to use. Do you want to say something about the whole thing? Yes, you do. I know you do.
It's just some clients already kind of know what they want to build, and there's already rationale behind it. If there isn't, we just give them some templates to help them formulate it so that it's quite concise and understandable. It's all about building shared understanding, so it's just helping them formulate it.
Okay, so in the format of the team mission will be bullet points of stuff that our client will give us. And so what we get, this is a little exercise we get the teams to do a team brochure. You can't see the gray bits, but at the top it's the product name. Somebody who's artistic can draw a little picture. There's a description, and then key points of your project. And down below at the bottom, it's the project motto. And as a team, you come up with this poster and then put it up, and kind of gives everybody a common understanding of what is expected of them. And you're having a conversation about what the client is expecting of you. And mission tests, again, come in 3 to 5 bullet points. But then we get this exercise for teams to maybe eke out some more that they think, or have a conversation around the ones that is expected of them, and then you might think, well, it's not quite right, or we could add this or add that. So that is purpose, the first dimension of Agile Chartering. And then alignment. Like I said earlier, it's about the teams, it's about trust, it's about consideration within the team, getting to know each other, getting to, if you bring new people into a project, you can redo some of these. Values and principles, this is so important, how you're going to work together, etiquette in meetings, the communication with people outside, how you're going to communicate with each other in the project community. And it's about being polite and considerate, and there's all sorts of things that can come out. So this is an exercise with post-it notes, and you come up with basic, integrity and honesty and communication, and then you take those single words and you make them principles by making those small ones into sentences. Team timelines this timeline exercise is one of my all-time favorite things. We use this in this exercise in Agile Chartering, but it's also very useful in other things. Like at the end of a project, have you ever done, a sort of, the timeline of a project and how you felt along the way, and it sort of ekes out a sort of, it's like a retrospective. But this timeline is for your career, this one, particular one. You can, and in this way, everybody does their own little timeline, and then they stand up and they tell the room what the timeline is all about. And you start to understand what you have to offer from each of your team members and get to know any gaps. So one of the big things in this alignment is to find out, are there any gaps? Do we need to bring in some more skills? There's another one that Diana Larson is really, one of her favorites, is the team shield, and it has quadrants in it, and it's similar but different. I used this timeline one when we were trying to align ourselves on what is a product owner, what is a Scrum Master, and tech lead, what are the roles in these and how do they differ? Because one of our clients was getting it all mixed up, so I got them all together. And the first thing we did was a timeline of their Agile journey. And so we were all collectively understanding each other's journey and how much we knew about Agile. And that was really useful. The working agreement, this is all about the team, how they're going to work together. When are we going to have our stand-ups? My bugbear is no computers in meetings, because if you're on your computer or your phone, you're not in my meeting. And that's my little bugbear. Other things you can do in this area is definition done, definition of ready, and those sort of things that was talked about in the lightning truck last night. Susan.
The interesting one on team timelines, quite often on this exercise, on top of finding the gaps in skills that Lynne mentioned, we usually find the hidden skills, things that people used to do in their previous job that actually add to the project and usually bring value. It's a really good exercise. And around all these exercises, what we've noticed is it's quite different to come to a team and tell them, agile principles, this is what we're going to do. And there's a massive difference if the team says, we will do this. It's all about the commitment and saying, not hearing it from someone else, but actually saying, this is what we will do. So we find these to be quite effective for team building.
I should mention that you've got to be brave sometimes to do some of these exercises. It takes an effort to get clients who don't understand why we're doing this. And if you're going to do it, you have to do it for a reason. So don't pick an exercise that you don't have an answer to that question, why are we doing this? I always prepare myself for that question because it always happens with our clients. And we were doing the timeline one time with one of our clients and he said it, why are we doing this? And I had the answer to it. I don't think was really convinced, but when it came around to him doing the timeline, you're only supposed to stand up and talk about your timeline for a minute or two. And I had my little timer going, and he went over the time with his timeline, and he went over the time, I kept pushing the clock again, and 20 minutes later he had finished, so I think he got it in the end how valuable it was, but he thought it was really valuable that we understood how brilliantly technical he was. Okay, so that's alignment. The last one is context. So, like I said in my little waterfall-y story, what are we doing? How does it fit in the big picture of things? What are the things that we're going to have to know about other systems? Who can we contact in another team that needs to know about us and us about them? And so these are a few exercises that we do. The boundaries and interactions is the project. This is a project community wheel. You've got your core team in the middle, and then the squares are, the interactions of other systems and people and teams that we're going to have to deal with. And you might put people's names, the contact of the people in those squares. And these things go up on the wall. They're information radiators, so they're always there. And then eventually when they fall apart, you can put them in your wiki. And another boundaries and interactions is the project community cloud. So you've got your team again in the middle, and the blue area is the people who are committed to the project, and the green area is the involved people in the project. You want to talk about that one? Okay. The next one is the committed resources. Again, not people. This is systems, data stores, computers, maybe a bit of training that's needed. And building these posters really gives you a common understanding of these things. And the last one is the perspective analysis. Okay, what's going to come and bite us on the butt? What are the things that we know that are going to come and bite us on the butt later, keep us up at night? And we want to talk about them. We want to make it visible. We want to have a common understanding around it. And also the perspective analysis is, what are the opportunities that we have? So it's not only the risks, but it's the stuff that, okay, if we take that opportunity, then we have a better chance of successfully doing this, that, and the other. So we have a conversation around all these things, and we use this chart the impact is on the left, the probability is on the bottom right, and it's positive, negative, above and below the middle line. And I don't know why I put the bottom line down there, but we should take that out.
So I think in all the liftoff meetings and workshops that I've facilitated, it's this dimension that is usually where the most value is kind of gained. If you get the whole team and stakeholders in one space, you will identify all sorts of things in these. So, for example, boundaries and interaction exercise. This is all the other companies, suppliers, departments, systems, APIs, governance, and the way of interactions. Is it incoming? Should we be doing something for them? And this is all mapping that context. As Lynne said, the committed resources is always a good one. What else do we need? Do we need some licenses? Do we need some other tools? And the perspective analysis always, what are the biggest risks that we know are coming our way? Can we start preparing for them early? Risk analysis, as somebody mentioned today, is not always that well covered in Agile, and we find this exercise to be amazing in Liftoff.
Some of these things that come up are really relevant to teams, especially in this perspective analysis area, and the risks that come out of that we need to look at all the time. We put on a little matrix on our board and keep track of that. And if it's up there visible, you can talk about it every day. So a lot of very good stuff comes out of these sessions. And we also do a workshop, and we get people to try these things out. We call it Agile Chartering Express, because you go through the whole process. Now this can take a day, it can take a half a day, or you can spread it across different days. You need to get as many people in the room as you possibly can that is relevant to it. Your stakeholders, your sometimes users, the technical people, the team, and when I say team, I mean all UXers, everybody. Get them in the room. But sometimes stakeholders, they don't think they need to be there. You have to build their trust to get them in the room, and then not waste their time. So sometimes we'll do the alignment, just the values and principles, or some of these exercises we'll do with the stakeholders in the room, and then you can let them go back to their very busy lives and carry on with the team and do the rest of the things. So you don't have to always do them in order. There's no rules, but it's important. It's a framework to make sure that you lift your projects off to a trajectory of success. And she hates it when I say that. I love my rockets. My dad used to build them. Okay, so where does it fit? Lift your projects off with Agile Chartering. It's just one of the things, one of the really important things. It's the secret sauce. It really is important. All of our projects now do this. Our company is all over Europe now, and I've infected them with this now. And so they're all talking about it and doing it with their projects too. But you can realign your project. So take some of these exercises again. You remember my story of Agile on the Beach. I came back and I sat with my tech lead and my engagement manager, and I was so excited about it. And I said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, I'm going to do the working agreement, blah, blah, blah. And they both looked at me like I was from the moon. And they said, no, you're not. And I just kind of went away and did it anyway. What I did was I hijacked retrospectives and I started doing some of these exercises. And it was absolutely fantastic, the difference it made to our team to have that common understanding. And do you want to go on?
Yeah, so what we've showed you is our kind of basic structure for Liftoff, and that's our starting point. We usually tailor it to the project. What do we need to do? What is kind of obvious we don't. It gets interesting on larger projects and team of teams. So there's a similar framework to use when you have more teams, and the whole interactions become a discussion of how each team will pass work to each other and how they will coordinate together. And also, we don't just do it at the beginning of the project. We sometimes do it at any phase of product delivery, especially in the life phase. If you have a project or a product that's been growing for 2-3 years, it's definitely worth having that realignment at some point.
In big projects with team of teams, yeah, you want everybody in the room. Absolutely. Doesn't matter how many teams there are. The stakeholders are usually going to be the same for all these teams, so you get rid of the stakeholders as soon as possible, and then you break into your teams and you do the team-specific ones within your own teams. So you get a room full of tables of people doing these exercises. It's really an exciting experience to facilitate. If you have nothing more to say,
No.
I can ask you for some questions. Any questions?
You have on your slide, the purpose slide, the team mission. I'm just wondering, is that a list of sort of functional requirements, to do this, or is it also, I guess, is it also something else? What else?
It can be. It can be what well, basically the description of it is what the team is expected to do to contribute to the vision. So it can go into things like a certain technology stack that you have to adhere to. It can be some kind of level of usability. It can be technical, non-technical. It is what your client is expected. So it doesn't go too deep into detail. It's a few bullet points of expectations.
Can I just answer that?
Yeah.
It's worth making them quite tangible. So, for example, if you say we will work with the research department to collate the newest findings in AI, it's worth quantifying that. Because what you have to do then is design the mission tests on your team mission. So how are you going to know that you've completed that particular mission element? So making them quite tangible is usually the best way. Any other question? Yeah.
Looking at the team timeline.
Timeline?
The timeline on that slide. Can you just explain a little bit more how that works from an individual person point of view?
So we ask every person to draw that and quickly cover the ups and downs in their career. We ask them not to go to too much detail. It's supposed to be quite a fast exercise. And then we sort of ask them to play it back to the team. So every person from the team is supposed to sort of cover their quick career, let's say, and
So
launch
this is
timeline.
the start of your career, and that's today, where you are today.
Yeah.
And then this is sort of you're satisfied-ish, but you're really satisfied up here and not satisfied with what you're doing here. So it takes you through your journey of where you got today in your work life.
Great discussions also if you say I've been there, but actually my satisfaction has been rock bottom because this and this and this. So that adds to the team discussion what not to do on our project.
And it also gives insight to the stuff you may not talk about when you're, when you're working together. You may not talk about these things in your life that got you down, but it's good to have that context of the good and the bad in these things. And you can see where you can use this. Use your imagination. It is a really fabulous exercise.
Yes? Sorry.
Is it hard to get that level of honesty so early when people just start to
too hard. I mean,
No.
people are reluctant to talk about the negative stuff for sure, but usually when it's in a team setup, it's a good icebreaker. Do you find it otherwise? 'Cause
Once people start, you can't shut them up.
sorry, there was another question here. Yeah.
How do you make this work when you've got a geographical dispersed team and different time zones? Everyone's a remote,
Yeah.
but the project's global.
As best as we can. There is something about this whole workshop about and being in the same space and actually collaborating. If you have to do it in a distributed setup, I would say divide it maybe into smaller chunks and find a really good online tool. Definitely video conferencing. You might have to facilitate things differently, so people might have to call things out, and one person might have to do the post-its. It is possible. It's hard. It's much better if you actually can get away with bringing all these people together. I know it's hard, but
it is a really good reason to get everybody together with distributed teams. I think that's rule number one when you have a distributed team, is to get them all together. I once had a project where there was 8 people in the team and they were all in a different place. So we got together for this. It's unbelievable that everybody was working in a different place, but 8 people, and we all got together. It's really important to do that. So if you can find the money to do it and get everybody together, it's better when you're working with somebody that you've sat next to and had these conversations with. Any more questions?
Point on that, it's great if you can get everybody together, and it's also worth the effort of making it work. And when you distribute it as well, it just takes a lot more effort to try and organise it. But I've done similar things, particularly in different locations, where things like getting people into rooms and in a different location so they can collaborate and have a conversation, and having a facilitator in each location as well can really help.
Yeah.
Flow.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Yes.
Slide which says the boundaries.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
On the slide there was a boundaries which you try to work out what are dependencies with the other teams.
Yeah.
Would you foresee in the complex environment where there are many systems, the architectural design would fall into that area, or would you expect somewhere else?
Well, these 2 particular exercises are about identifying all the other things we have to interact with, and also how we're going to interact with them. So we usually manage to identify a lot of systems here.
Architecture and stuff like that, technical stuff, that will be in your team mission.
So at some point the architects are part of your team, they have to work with you, unless it's a dependency.
Yeah.
The cloud exercise is good at identifying what you have influence on directly next to your team, and what is your sort of extended sort of influence, where you can kind of have influence but not directly. So both actually are quite good exercises. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Any other question? No? Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, one more. For us, we do quite a lot of project work.
Yeah.
So we use our team to do quite a lot of projects in our field. And when we do, if we do sessions like these, effectively, if you think of it as a timeline or describing their skills, they're doing what they describe.
Mm-hmm.
How do you overcome that within your team?
So as we said, if you don't think there's a point doing an exercise, then by all means, if you have people who know each other quite well, then come up with a better team building exercise for sure. Don't waste their time.
Yeah, this is a good point, actually. There are more exercises that are out there in the world of Agile. There are books on it. You can choose all sorts of exercises, but remember, have an answer to that question. Is this useful? Why are we doing this? And with teams that already know each other, it's one of my favorite ones is the skills matrix. So how we want to cross-skill within our Agile teams, but who's the one that is the expert in this, that, and the other? And also you use the skills matrix for what you want to learn, and what you want to be better at.
If you do skills metrics across a few teams, it's easier for people to find mentors and coaches. And what we found is it's easier to onboard people into projects when you can take them around and show them these things. It's much easier to kind of get people into the project. Yeah. I think we're running out of time. Thank you everybody so much. It's been a great session. Thank you.
Thank you.